all of the people were angry. Like,
those people.
Very
People that we
awakening
need
of-
to educate, love into awareness.
love them in the right direction.
To fix your personal image, you could humble yourself and to commit to giving the audience what they wanted. Or attack them, claim nothing's your fault and it's just, I've just watched women get torn down my whole life, as you get handed everything on a silver platter. Now, of course, Rachel Zegler isn't the only person practicing this grift. There are many other racist bigots which love to pull it as well, quite simply because it works. It's the reason why they have a career in the first place, and so they really don't want to get back to talent having to matter. Or even worse, having to care what the audience thinks. Please, I don't want to have to care about the little people. I'm a Hollywood celebrity, you see. The audience don't even have a basic sense of empathy. And despite in her personal life realizing that traditional definitions of happily ever after are the best way to live, she has made a modern persona to push onto other people.
Look at the chubby little bastards just sitting around everywhere. I mean, what are they? Pets for chairs?
No, you do that, yes. Have all the modern ideas while I ignore them. You'd think that alone, pushing horrific ideas on other people while you know better than to do them yourselves, would on its own be enough. But Rachel Zegler has never done anything by halves. This is someone who has entire articles by places like Teen Vogue compiling all the different dramas she's been a part of, or as they phrase it, saying what needed to be said. She's not afraid to look upon the audience and go, ha ha, peons. Whether that be attacking the audience by calling them toxic fandoms, or saying that she felt like Teflon because she could ignore justified criticism from the audience that you need money from. She's been jumping to the defense of Taylor Swift. Is she a billionaire? Taylor Swift, the 1.6 billionaire. Help! I'm a defenseless billionaire. Somebody save me from the dangly bits. He's saying words. Definitely somebody that needed to be defended from misogynistic comments. Which was basically that people didn't believe she was with a bloke and so wanted proof. Men feel entitled to speak about women and their bodies. Oh, I mean, firstly, yes, they're different and so you can talk about them differently, dear. This might be difficult for you to comprehend because it's not something that's actually about you. But for normal people who can abstract, this isn't difficult to understand. Best bit was when she went, you never see people speaking this way about a bloke, when they're literally talking about Travis Kelce as well. We don't pick apart men's relationship, while forgetting that this was a man's. And it's not even just the blokes that say this. People without dangly bits do it too. It's like, so what's your point then? What you're actually saying is this is just a normal, fundamental part of humanity and you don't like it. Well, get stuffed, nobody cares. You're free not to like something. Tough. Then, of course, we get the justified criticism about her Snow White casting and the comments that she made about it.
Big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. I will elbow everyone out of the way to play the part. Weird.
There's her saying she joined Shazam just because she needed a job and couldn't get one. Defending someone else for justified criticism. Ah yes, not being invited to the Oscars because I'm such a big star and you ignored me.
So everyone went crazy on social, as you can imagine, and the Academy responded yesterday.
Why didn't you give me $100,000 for doing absolutely nothing?
Rachel not only got an invitation to watch the Oscars, she's actually going to be a presenter.
Dreams really can come true pretty fast, too.
And getting candid about how she's Polish. I'm so privileged, and I'm also oppressed. I mean, if anything, your main privilege is that you can play the victim and go around throwing slurs at people. The more slurs you throw at the audience and the more money you cost the box office, the more you get promoted. That's real privilege. The power of the fake victim. But it is these different scandals that she constantly keeps getting herself into. Why she needs to fix her PR, and exactly what this article is meant to do. And rather than taking accountability and responsibility for her own actions and comments, instead, we're just going to attack the audience again. We're going to go back through history and gaslight people about it. We're going to rewrite it, reframe it into a new light to desperately say, I'm a victim! And surprisingly, it was Amazon Prime Video, Rings of Power, which had the most accurate summary of this behavior. Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss. Sauron seems to be a great analogy to Rachel as a whole. Like, you've got evil in the front, dainty in the back, which is very much an evil persona to push on everybody else. But dainty and traditional, behind closed doors. Evil for you, wholesome for me. Depression for you, a family for me. Now, they start talking about her role in Romeo and Juliet, a play written by an Englishman about Italians being played by a Polish, Colombian, American. Look, I changed my mind. Representation is important. I'm just asking when we're gonna get any. The worst thing is what they're doing to Shakespeare in the first place, that it's leaning heavily into the culture of its Gen Z cast. This is going to be a play to see whether it's the Montagues or the Capulets that can out-riz each other. You're just going to see Rachel tell Romeo that he needs to start gooning. Or, in her own words, Juliet would be having a brat girl summer.
Alan is not brat, but according to that, it sounds...
I know, the cringe is strong with this one, but it really is the tamest part of the article. Almost immediately, they get into her relentless criticism, complaints that grew sinister as they got ever more accurate. West Side Story, where she was called ungrateful and entitled. This is all the article says for this, when actually the story goes a lot deeper. The reason why there was such backlash about her being in West Side Story is because she kept playing the same cards that she always does. Oh, I represent the real people. This is the real story of West Side Story. This is all about representation, and I represent Puerto Rico, despite the fact I'm Colombian and Polish and American.
We evolved to a place where we were properly representing the people that the story's about.
The problem was, despite crapping on the original for not being representative, the show is about Puerto Ricans. She's not Puerto Rican. So when they complained and said, you don't represent us, what are you talking about? When it was justified criticism, well, she turned around and had a go at them as well.
Do you speak the language? Does it matter? Does it matter? Do you eat the food? Does it matter?
Were you born in the country? Does it matter? Were either of your parents born in the country? Does it matter? Have you got any ties to the culture of that country at all? Does it matter? Seriously, how many degrees of freedom do we need to get before it becomes a little bit absurd to claim you're Puerto Rican?
I'm not Puerto Rican.
Is that okay?
The article does this a lot. It talks a lot about the response to the problem and really downplays or completely ignores what she did as the action, which initially prompted the response.
Just became a conversation about how many different ways there are to be of Latin descent.
It may have seemed weird at the start that I'm talking about Romeo and Juliet being written by an English person about Italians. And you don't have Italians or English people in it. Where's the representation? You may not think that's important, but Rachel is supposed to. That's a principle that she said in the past was important.
We evolved to a place where we were properly representing the people that the story's about.
We simultaneously have the hypocrisy of representation is important if it gets me the role, and it's not important if it gets me the role. The iron law of Hollywood. It's always self-interest.
How does it...
Now, an accusation of hypocrisy generally doesn't carry any weight. Principle would only carry weight with a person if they genuinely held those beliefs, and if they did genuinely believe those things, they probably wouldn't have been a hypocrite over them.
I cannot even believe those words just came out of your face towards my face.
Whereas if they're just taking on a principle in order to use it as a weapon in an argument, then hypocrisy will mean nothing. They're only using it to gain something for themselves, whether it be money, reputation, or power.
Snow White has to learn a lot of lessons about coming into her own power before she can come into power over a kingdom.
If you can be in Romeo and Juliet, then there was nothing wrong with West Side Story. So why were you whining about it? Oh, it's because it got you the job. It put money in your bank balance. West Side Story was actually more moral because your bank balance increased. Because now you represent the Puerto Ricans who didn't like you and criticized you for it. What does it say about representation in film when the starring character is specifically supposed to be Puerto Rican, yet casting chooses someone who is not? When your father's Polish, you were born in America and your mother's Colombian. Where does the Puerto Rican come in?
We evolved to a place where we were properly representing the people that the story's about.
So you can understand why a Puerto Rican may have had some complaints over the role when this movie was specifically supposed to be doing the thing that they're not doing. They kept bragging about it in all of the interviews, said it was so important, and just didn't do it.
Went out of their way to actually celebrate the diaspora of the Hispanic community.
But for some reason, they're the problem, for calling you ungrateful and entitled.
You have a way with words.
No,
word vomit.
With this in mind, it's a lot more understandable why you would be so happy to take over Snow White. As it turns out, you're as representative of Snow White as you were of Maria in the first place.
We evolved to a place where we were properly representing the people that the story's about.
Then, when she was taking a part in Shazam, she said she only took the role in Shazam because she needed the money.
What made you want to step into this world of DC heroes? I needed a job. I'm being so serious.
This is quite the interview.
A lot of people keep asking me, hi Adam, my agent's over there. Hi Ken, my lawyer, my entire family is here. Hi everybody.
It is one of those, I can't believe you're saying this. There's no way you're still saying this.
I was not working and I couldn't get a job for the life of me. It was really hard to book work for me.
It comes across very much like the Agatha interview, where she obviously doesn't care about what she's saying.
Have you seen Avengers movies?
Exactly it, yeah.
No. Do you want to see Avengers movies?
Because she doesn't really care that much about the job that she's just done. And so the variety interviewer is amazing. It's like, no, you're supposed to be saying this.
Who do you want to fight? Who's the superhero you want to go with?
I don't know anything about them, so...
He's trying to cover for her. He's trying to be like, surely you want to be in the next Marvel thing, right? No, I don't really care.
Why not? You're part of... I should say I want to because I want to be in the Marvel Universe.
And she says, eat my ass.
Is it nice?
That's why people criticize it. It's not that you took the job because you needed the money. Everybody works because they need the money. It's because you cared so little about the role, you were willing to admit it.
It was really hard to book work for me.
You know what that means, right? It means I didn't care about this role. I had nothing else. There was no other jobs available, so I just took this. It comes across like you don't care about the movie and therefore the audience. Or more importantly, the IP which the audience cares about. The reason why you were seen as tacky and in need of media training is because it was true. This was a response to something you said. But rather than looking at that and going, was there any problem with what I said? Was there any justified criticism I should have got for that? Instead, everyone else's problem. Couldn't be me. Couldn't be me that was wrong. Media training would have taught you why you were wrong. This isn't even a unique situation. Well, you don't go into interviews and go, why do you want to work for us? And you go, yeah, money. Money, really. You wouldn't get that job either. And every time she speaks up about racism and sexism in the entertainment industry, every time I start making up issues to try and get myself into a more privileged position, people have a problem with it. It's disgusting.
We evolved to a place where we were properly representing the people that the story's about.
Do you speak the language? Does it matter?
Does it matter?
Do you eat the food? Does it matter?
I'm a Puerto Rican.
Rather than dealing with the industry as it exists, rather than competing with other people on a level playing field, instead, no, we're going to try and make up problems so that we can get into privileged positions we don't deserve. She's slammed as just another die hire, coasting on her identity rather than her talent. Whenever anybody says, I can't believe you've said this, the question isn't, is that offensive? Should they have said? No, is it true? If it's true, then you can say anything. And that makes it the other person's problem if they have a problem with reality. Are you just coasting by on your identity?
We evolved to a place where we were properly representing the people.
You might be a very talented person, but still getting jobs pushed on you above other people because of your identity. Why'd you never talk about being Polish? Why'd you keep claiming heritages from around the world rather than just saying you're American? Why so often do you come out and start talking about various different pressure points and slurs that you can throw around at people? Why'd you never just limit it to the actual job you're doing? Why are you always waffling on about how you're representing huge groups of people who you have nothing to do with? What I'm basically saying is if you don't want people to come out and accuse you of coasting by on your identity, why don't you keep bringing it up all the time? She's trying to have a sense of humor about the vitriol.
Interviews and shows where the spotlight goes, pretending life is tough when I'm in fancy clothes. Cry wolf, cry wolf.
So then we get a big description of her clothing, even down to wearing hoop earrings. The look is effortless, classic cool girl. She blends in well with the clientele brunching at tables nearby. But these are not her people. Maybe that was to prepare you for a paragraph of how she just can't stand Hollywood, or seemingly the people in Hollywood. Stifling and isolating, but in New York, nobody cares. Yes, in New York, they have no standards. And it only doubles down when she goes, my love for New York doubled after shooting Snow White. It's not until you have to go around the world filming in different cities that you realize how grateful you are for the diversity of New York. It was going around the world that made her realize how great all the different cultures are around the world. It makes sense until you read the next paragraph. When I came home from my year in Europe, going back to my bodega, where people speak Spanish to me, I was like, oh my, I missed you, Enrique. She actually meant the opposite. It seems like when she said she appreciated the diversity of New York, what she actually meant was, I appreciate that in New York there are people just like me who speak Spanish to me, who are my people, speaking my language. And what I actually want is to be around people like me. So when she went around the world in different cities, she realized, I don't like any of these other cultures or people. What I want is the people like me in New York. And she realized that when she went to Europe. I don't know whether she went to Poland and actually did meet people culturally related to her. And it was actually going around Europe where she realized, I only want to be around people like me, not any of those pesty Europeans, because the people in Europe don't classify as diverse. It is always interesting when people give themselves away with the terminology they use. Sometimes you can be too honest. So in New York, people can wear whatever they want because there's no standards in New York. So if she's like, should I wear this? There's always someone more ridiculous ridiculous than her. So it's a nod to her because she wants to become the only human actor in a Muppets production, which, to be honest, I think would probably be her most accurate role, as every time she speaks she comes across as a Muppet. I support this. That'll have to wait though, because Rachel's in her princess era.
I'm gonna stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess. I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
And while many have promised to boycott the film due to its casting, well, yeah, the dwarfs. You know, those dwarfs that you go and boss around all the time.
You're progressive in one way, but you're still making that backward story of 7 dwarves.
It's just that in the original Snow White, she goes and does it for the little children who don't have a mother, whereas in this, she's basically enslaving them to clean the house because it's too dirty for her. We've gone from selfless to entitled prick. They're being men working in the mines. How about you pull your finger out and do something, love? But to them, the actress's Colombian heritage.
We evolved to a place where we were properly representing the people that the story's about.
You see what I mean? American actress. Her mother is of Colombian descent, and her father of Polish descent. You love to talk about white privilege. Why don't you speak about that and Polish heritage and be like, I'm as close to this as I can get?
Just means that our stories are worth telling.
That would backfire on you in Hollywood. You know that you would genuinely be discriminated against if you chose that route. You're doing anything to disown that and instead using the other pressure point. You know, the one that gives you unearned privileges that you don't deserve.
The industry talks a lot about identity.
At the end of the day, this is a story of representation, and it matters.
I'm Colombian now! And that means that I have to go and destroy the casting of this, which has nothing to do with me.
Properly representing people.
Representation, Rachel, it's really important. And yet every role you take on, you never represent the people that matter in the story. I mean, really, I think that representation is so important that you should step aside to make an actual actor of that role come forwards. Because Snow White is described as having black hair and skin as white as snow. Never mind that the character is also popular in some other countries. So, Clarkson's Farm is incredibly popular in many countries around the world. It doesn't mean that you can go out and replace Jeremy Clarkson with some random foreigner. James Bond should always be British. Doctor Who should always be British.
The biggest thing we've mounted so far.
Cultural appropriation.
Who are they, that woman and the man with the hair?
They just traveled in the darkness.
But most of all, if your character has an accurate description of what they look like, then the actor needs to look like them in order to fulfill the role. This is why I couldn't be in Black Panther, because it destroys the entire work. When somebody walks, you're like, that doesn't even make any sense.
I remember my grandmother saying to me, I don't care what they tell you in school, Cleopatra was black.
You look nothing like them.
I imagine her to have curly hair like me and a similar skin colour.
I imagine that she was a Ferrari F430 that flew through space. It's like an impersonator that only talks in their own voice. Oh, you're only supposed to blow the doors off. Not other people's fault for criticising you. It's your job for being bad at your job. But Rachel says that she really liked it. She could actually relate to the princess because she had the same colour hair as her.
I imagine her to have curly hair like me.
Leaving aside for the moment how basic and, quite frankly, low IQ it is to only like a character because it has the same colour hair as you rather than any aspect of the story, emotions, or morality of that tale. No, it's just we had the same colour hair.
Like me.
At no point in her tiny little mind does she think, I actually can't be this role because I am taking away this role from all of those millions of people whose story that this belongs to.
We evolved to a place where we were properly representing the people that the story's about.
I deserve
all of those people that related to this story. I'm now destroying it for them.
Cultural appropriation.
Because they looked just like all those little girls, and now they won't. No, instead, Rachel doesn't even bother to try and understand why people can't imagine someone who's Latina, Polish, in their beloved princess shoes. She can't even be bothered to try and understand the problems that she's causing. Not going to put any thought into it at all. Do they have justified criticism? Who knows? My bank balance is going up, but that's the most important thing. So then we go into how it doesn't actually matter because it's a children's cartoon, and children will just be like, okay, that's Cinderella, and so it doesn't actually matter what they look like. In which case, why did you think it was so important for West Side Story?
We were properly representing the people that the story's about.
What are they for?
just means that our stories are worth telling, and at the end of the day, this is a story of representation, and it matters.
People that the story's about.
Look at the chubby little bastards just sitting around everywhere.
If you are going to try and grift in the industry, pick a lane so that it doesn't become so obvious that you're lying in one of the situations.
Representation matters.
It's fat litter. It's a sofa parasite!
That it doesn't become so obvious that you're lying about what you believe in one of the situations. Unless you do hold two contradictory ideas in your head at the same time, which both just happen to coincidentally benefit you monetarily. But no, apparently Brandy told her about it. I'm going to give you advice on how to deal with the barrage of negativity. You're not taking on this role to fit the mold of the critics, the audience. You're doing this for every little Colombian girl who's yet to see themselves in this role as a Disney princess. Like, oh, so now it's important what you look like, because before, like, literally one paragraph ago, it wasn't important at all. Now, how you look is important.
Representation, and it matters.
Because you're representing people. But before, it wasn't important at all, because children just accept it anyway. This is why I stopped calling people stupid and started calling them evil. To write things like this, back to back, you have to know what you're doing. You're literally writing two contradictory opinions next to each other. Like, oh yeah, we'll just say it both ways.
You have a way with words.
No.
Word vomit.
You're doing this for the little girl that grew up without any representation. For a start, she has an American culture. She's culturally American. She's not culturally Polish or Colombian. That's her parents. She grew up in America. And believe me, all of these statements that you're doing are very much American statements. All of this victim culture is very much American culture because it works there. This wouldn't work in Colombia because everyone's Colombian. You are showing her that anything is possible for someone who looks like her. She too can go to America and start grifting over people that deserve the role by going, actually, you're irrelevant. I'm far important because of these people over here.
I love movies. I love making them. And I am a fan of movies.
Maybe if we can collectivize even more people behind us and claim that we represent them while crushing other people that we think are irrelevant, maybe that'll be better for our bank balance as well.
At the end of the day, this is a story of representation, and it matters.
Collectivizing people you've never met, people you have nothing to do with, and use them as a way to enhance your own bank balance, the most important job in the world. And all of these Europeans, they don't need to actually have their own stories and culture which they created. No, this is for me now to represent these other people, because I don't care about those. I went around their cities and was just glad to be back in New York around my own people. This might be one of the most bigoted interviews ever made.
All of the people were angry. Like,
those people.
Variants
People that we
awakening
need
of-
to educate.
As for that line of skin as white as snow, we fell back to another version of history where we could just make something up about it being that she'd survived a snowstorm. Yes, apparently skin as white as snow means that you survived a snowstorm. Right. So if you've got skin as blue as a flood, it's not actually referring to your skin, it's referring to the water that you were found in. Are you sure? Because even though in the 1812 Brothers Grimm story, it does specifically say what she looked like, there's even talk about whether it was a true story or not. Going back to the Countess of 1554 who was famed for her beauty, that Snow White could actually lie in history, and well, that would be the one in history from 1554. I know when dealing with evil and low IQ people that both of them are so mentally feeble they can't actually understand that when you go back through history it doesn't look like the New York you know today. That actually, due to the difficulty of transportation, everyone kind of stayed in the same areas. But this is one of the reasons why if stories don't actually say something, it's because every single person they knew looked like them, and so it was obvious. And I don't really know what you thought that somebody called Snow White would look like, but I mean, you do have to choose whether you're stupid or evil. That is a question you're going to have to face one day. So we just randomly tried to make up an excuse about how we could go and destroy an ancient story which has nothing to do with our heritage, while also contradicting how important it is for other people. Now, it's so important that other people see themselves, but not you, though. Not you. We can't have you seeing yourself. No, you've got to be represented by Rachel Zegler, the insufferable cow.
This carpet is a person with feelings.
Then we go on to the social media element of it and the conversations that she said, what she said, that her version wouldn't spend her days pining over a man. No, actually, she said her story wouldn't be about falling in love with the prince.
She's not going to be dreaming about true love.
Not going to be saved by the prince.
She called aspects of the original story weird.
Weird.
Because she said that the prince literally stalks her.
Big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
You should have just left her to die. I mean, I agree with you. I'm just surprised that that would be your take on it. Overnight, online trolls, people who listened to what she said and then accurately responded to her own comments, took shots at her disdain for the animated classic, which was clearly on display.
I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. I know you're a longtime Disney fan. How does it be very important to a lot of people, including myself?
Deeming her unworthy of portraying the Disney heroine. True. because she doesn't represent the people that the story does. And that's important. In all honesty, it made me sad because I believe that women can do anything. What's it got to do with that? No one was asking for a bloke in the role. These comments were specifically about you being in the role because you look nothing like how she should and didn't represent the people the story was meant to represent, which, as you've said, is so important.
We evolved to a place where we were properly representing the people that the story's about.
But I don't just believe they can do anything. I believe they can do everything. That's because you've never grown up from the mental capacity of a child and actually gone through any hardship in life. It really is a very childish attitude to be like, you can do anything and be everything. No, you can't. But because you've just got given everything on a silver platter because of your identity, then you just assume that. It's the same reason that rich kids don't understand why poor people exist. If you get given everything that you don't deserve, you're just like, well, wait, why can't they just have everything as well? Obviously, it was possible for me. People just gave me millions of dollars. Why can't we just give the homeless person millions of dollars as well? This is just a case of you not realizing how unique and privileged your position is, and then going around thinking that allows you to comment on the rest of the world. It's very upsetting when things get taken out of context or jokes don't land. I think she's referring to this.
All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
It's not a joke when you've been crapping on it before, talking about how it's not important, how being the leader is the most important thing. I'm not going to be falling in love with her. So then when you go, well, all these parts might be cut. It might be, because it's not the integral part of the story. But no, now the love is very integral. We were always going to do a love story. It just wasn't what we were talking about on that. No, we were talking about how much you were going to go around being a girl boss. How he was irrelevant and he didn't matter because it was the career. It was more important than anything else. I've watched women get torn down my whole life. Again, collectivizing other people underneath herself in order to take their power and go, it's not just me you're attacking. You're attacking over half of the population of the world.
You have a way with words.
No.
Word vomit.
They're not though, are they? Because it was your comments that we're talking about you specifically. And it doesn't matter if you go, well, I've got no dangling. It doesn't matter because you were the one that said it. You're the one that did the action that provoked the response. You're the one that's responsible for that response. You're the one that caused that response. And you're the one who should be apologizing for it. Instead, you're, oh, this is just what happens. It couldn't have possibly been me which had caused all these things. It must just be the fact that I'm like half the rest of the world. And yet half the world doesn't have these problems, Rachel. It's you, where you've gone from movie to movie and they've followed you around. It's your comments, your actions, which have caused problems that have followed you specifically around. And you trying to spread that blame across half the population of Earth won't save you from it. You can't remove yourself of responsibility for your actions just because of what's between your legs. After this, it's basically hopes for a future career, kind of personal life. You basically move into a puff piece where it's trying to improve her reputation. You see, we've talked about the horrible things she's done. Now you should feel sorry for her. Look, isn't she really wholesome with like a family and stuff? Aren't people just mean to me for no reason whatsoever? Definitely not in response to what I do. I just want to be grateful for the quiet. Those are the moments where I feel most like myself. I'm just an innocent little wholesome wife who just wants to go out into the forest with my 4 kids, not cause any drama. And all these people are coming for me and attacking me for no reason. Just doesn't pass the sniff test. Especially when you leave out all of the reasons why all of this happened, which was her. She was the impetus, the driving force, the action that people responded to. And it's no surprise that loads of actors and actresses can go from movie to movie with no drama at all. And yet everywhere Rachel goes, drama follows. Because it's what she says, what she does, and the actions that she takes. And yet never seems to hold herself accountable for them. Arguing on two sides of an issue. Always depending on, what will get me the most money in this situation? Or allow me to get one over the person who's talking? The variety puff piece definitely seems to be trying to be used to rehabilitate her image. The issue is, it only doubled down on the image that she's already got. She's already been trying to, I'm just an innocent victim and everyone's always coming. It's like, no, that won't get you on side with the audience. And you need the audience on your side because they're the people that give you money. And you don't want to be the person that the audience dislikes because then every single movie you go to, that audience doesn't want to see that movie because you're in it. There is talk about you should separate the art from the artist. I don't really consider most movies art, but I definitely don't think they should be separated from the people in them. I think your reputation matters. I think the audience that you bring with you to a movie is actually important, and that's why the big actors were meant to get the big money, because they're supposed to have a following themselves who will go and see them because they're in it. And if that's true, and I think it is, that also means there will be actors who have pissed off the audience, who every time they make a movie will negatively harm that that movie because nobody wants to see it because they're in it. The way you get around that is to appeal to them. But the way that this happened is simply to blame them, to attack the very audience who has only ever been responding to what you've been doing in the first place. That when you came out and said that you thought that the representation mattered, and then attacked the people you're supposed to be representing, and then came out in the next bit and go, well, of course representation doesn't matter with Snow White, but it really matters for all those Colombian people. Is it any wonder that people didn't like that? How they can tell exactly the tactics that you're using? Because I don't know whether Rachel thinks she's very smart, but when all your comments are this transparent and this obviously contradictory, you really shouldn't. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you liked the video. Subscribe, more videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.